Hello everyone and welcome to the Plants But Better channel. My name is Adina and today we are doing another care guide, but it's also a repot, but it's also a propagation video. So come along because we will talk about a lot of things. Mostly I would like to show you the repot because sometimes we forget about stuff. And this plant has been neglected, kinda. Maybe it's not the right word. Let's just say it was just left alone. So this plant is not very popular also, so I'm not expecting a lot of views. But maybe you will watch this out of curiosity and maybe you will find how to fix different problems like leggy plants. This is not the best type of situation. Repotting when it was due ages ago, and we will also talk about the care necessities for this plant and for philodendrons in general. By the way, if you're enjoying this and want to see exclusive details and behind the scenes, the extended version of this video is waiting for you on my Patreon. Links in the description box. Your support helps me create even more plant content for you, so thank you, and now back to the video. This plant is Philodendron Ernestii Red because the back of the leaves are kind of red, burgundy, something. I really liked this plant when I saw it and I bought it because red. That's it. I didn't know anything about this plant until I had it. So as you can see, the care meter for this plant, it's not quite 10 out of 10. It's more like an 8 out of 10 because of this situation. This vine, which is empty. And if we're talking about light, it received plenty because it was under a grow light for a couple months. And as you can see, these 4 leaves right here are grown by me. So I wouldn't say this plant is pretentious. This plant is quite great if you have light. Another thing I should mention is the fact that this plant actually produces nectar, which is pretty annoying because on some of the leaves you will see the damage on the back of the leaves and on the front as well. Nectar on philodendrons is pretty common. I also had nectar on Philodendron squamiferum and on Philodendron pedatum. But I wish this plant was nectar free because for some reason the damage, you can see, it's a bit more severe than on the other plants I had nectar on. Other than that, the growth pattern, as you can see, is getting ridiculous because I modified my grow light setup, and after that I think the top of the plant didn't receive as much light and it went like this with this runner, which we are going to chop off today. Let's see if I can remember from scratch the order of the care guide, because I also want to do a care guide if you're interested in this plant or similar plants. Water. What about water? So as is the case with most of my plants, I water it when the substrate is dry. Sometimes bone dry, but most of it dry. But I think I did a pretty good job because as you can see, the roots are very healthy, so the water schedule was pretty good. Before moving on to temperature, I will start repotting the plant and we will talk a lot about the details, and you will also see the repotting in the same time, just to make the video a bit more dynamic. Because the substrate is very good, it's very aerated, I will not remove it from the plant, but I think I will sacrifice this planter, which is actually a cup, to preserve this beautiful roots. If you're wondering why do I have this plant in a transparent pot, it's because first of all I like it, second of all I know it's not for everyone, and I know the roots need some darkness, but I like to see when the substrate is dry, so I won't kill my plants. And as you can see, it's working. So temperature for this plant, I would say average. It stayed pretty consistent, maybe something between 24 to 20, even 18 degrees Celsius degrees. And it's because my home it's a bit cooler during winter, but I noticed that most of the growth for this plant was during summer, because in winter it grew only this. I would suggest temperatures above 20 degrees Celsius. Okay, let's see. Maybe it's possible to remove this pot without cutting it. If we're talking about humidity, however, for this plant, I think the higher the better, because in my home the humidity is above 60% usually. Maybe that's why it developed such beautiful roots as well. If you have low humidity for your philodendrons, let's say 30%, that's what I consider low humidity, I would definitely invest in a humidifier if you're a hardcore plant lover. Yeah, I can manage to get these out. Well, the fact is that I like to recycle them. I like to use them over and over and over again until they are literally unusable. It's just I'm not wired to throw stuff out that it's still usable, if that makes sense. Okay, Done without losing any root. I saw on my list that after humidity I have to talk about fertilizer, and that's a bit funny because this plant was fertilized once in a blue moon when I remembered, but since right now it's spring, I fertilize with every watering. I'm like, okay, if you forget to fertilize that often, you need to build up a habit to fertilize. For now, the last couple of waterings were with fertilizer, but other than that, I have not fertilized this plant because I mostly forget. After fertilizer, the next segment is the substrate, and the substrate in my case, it's pretty basic, it's pretty simple. It's mostly coco coir mixed with some perlite. I have with me some bark, the substrate, which is kind of mixed already, and some pots. I don't know exactly which one I should use. This one is upcycled because it had cherry tomatoes in it, but I like the pot, so I kept it. This one is reused. I don't remember what plant was in it, but I washed it very good because you should do that every time you reuse a pot from bacteria, from bad stuff that could affect the roots of your plant. And this one is new, but it's a bit big. So depending on the roots, we'll see what we will choose. What do you think? This pot would be okay for this plant? The size of the pot, the capacity is good, but I would have loved it to be a bit taller. Let's see this one. This one is great, but I think it's a bit too transparent. Maybe this one. The black one I think is definitely too big. When you repot a plant, I think after substrate I'm supposed to talk about repotting. It's plastic versus terracotta first and then repotting. So just a few words about plastic versus terracotta. I will use plastic this time. The plant is used to plastic pots, so I will keep this choice for this video. I think maybe you could use terracotta as well, but I have a history of forgetting to water plants. Terracotta is too drying for my habits, so the substrate would dry out a bit more. If you see any like knocks from above, I'm very sorry, it's my neighbor. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to do. As you can see, unfortunately, I can do anything. Hopefully, you won't get too distracted by it. It's a bit distracting for myself, but I will try to concentrate as much as I can. I will make pauses when the knocking is insufferable, so bear with me. I'm still trying to deliver something nice. We were talking about terracotta, and for terracotta, wow, that's so loud. So if you're going to choose terracotta, make sure to water a bit more often. Let's move on to repotting. I'm repotting this because it needs it, clearly. It should have been repotted ages ago. I have no excuse. You can definitely repot it when you see signs, like me, and you can repot it during spring. I put some of the old substrate on the base, something like a centimeter or so. Let's see how we will loosen up a bit the roots and gently press into the new pot. Yeah, I think this is the pot. We don't need a huge pot because we don't want the plant to have too much substrate around the roots. It's because too much substrate will suffocate the plant and it will not let it breathe and it will eventually rot. And I hear a lot of people that maybe don't have time to research enough, or maybe it's just a misconception that if a plant has problems, it means it needs a bigger pot. And usually when they are repotting, they are not choosing something slightly bigger, they are choosing something double or triple the size of the old one, which is not a good idea if you are a heavy waterer. Now, the stuff about repotting in the spring or in the summer is good if you can do that because the plant is growing and it's active. Is it 100% necessary? Not exactly. If you see the plant doing well during winter, and if it has massive roots, you can definitely do your repot during winter. This advice with the spring scenario is actually great because the plant in general has a better chance of recovery. That's the only explanation, to put it like that. However, if your plant is yellowing and it definitely needs a repot, I would do it any time of the year. We are done with the repotting. We made a bit of mess, but doesn't matter. You know, when you're an adult, you can do anything and then take responsibility. So nobody is saying you cannot do that. Nobody is yelling at you. As you can see, the repotting was not professional, was not conventional, was not done by the book. It was just relaxing. And I think this is the most important part. So don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about the mess. Just enjoy yourself and your plants because they should bring you joy. They should be relaxing you. My TED talk is over, we could move on to propagating. And what makes this video a bit more special than the other care guides is the fact that we will propagate right now. I'm not just talking about it, we will be propagating. Of course, I'm not going to leave this alone because it's an aesthetic for me. I don't like it. It's a proof that this plant at one point didn't receive enough light because the distance between the nodes is massive. I think this is more than 10 centimeters. Now, to propagate this plant, we will be using sphagnum moss, food casserole, which is upcycled. It has a lid and is perfect for creating the high humidity we want. I will be using the sphagnum moss as the propagating medium, which is great in retaining humidity, and I've had great success with sphagnum. The sphagnum gods are nice to me. Usually I use damp sphagnum moss, but for now I will water it right now because I didn't do it before the video, and wait just a couple of minutes to let it absorb the water. Now moving on to this pretty vine, we have a clean pair of snips and we will cut every node from this vine. What I like a lot about this plant is the fact that you can see the axillary buds really well, and you also have, let's just say, some very young aerial roots. They are extremely hydrated, they are extremely juicy, and this is a clear advantage for our propagation. We'll just cut it. I will cut a bit more because we don't need a stem. Okay, cut. We have our first wet stick. Hopefully you can see the axillary bud, which is right here. Let's move on. I will cut a bit more of the stem because we don't need it. This is an excessive amount of stem, but I will also let a couple of centimeters of stem in the front and in the back of the node, because if we are unlucky, the stem could start to rot. And if we have this room of error, if we can cut a bit of the stem when we see the rotting, we have greater chances of success. Now let's finish the wet sticks. I have a lot of excessive stem, as you can see. We have our wet sticks, the sphagnum is already damp, and we will place our wet sticks with the bud facing up. And if you can see the aerial roots touching the damp moss is even better. For the last wet stick, I don't know exactly where the axillary bud is, and I will not be removing any more of the plant. I will just stick the aerial root in the moss and just let it do its thing. Now is the time to spray it with some water. I will just add just a bit more because it's not damp everywhere. I think this is enough. And after that, we will place the lid on our food container and we will be cooking. What I will do next is to place this container under a grow light and just let it be. From time to time, you can actually open the lid so you will let the air circulate a bit, maybe once every couple of days, something like that. Or if you don't have time for it, you can also pinch the lid and let the air circulate on its own. We have our repotted plant. Oh, by the way, we need to water this as well. I just water it with a great amount. I will wait for like 10 minutes to let the substrate be evenly saturated and then remove the excess water that is in my pot. Now, to continue the traditional care guide, after propagating, we should talk about pests. Unfortunately for me, I didn't see any pests on it, like ever, but I also do pest control treatments from time to time to prevent them. So if I had to guess, I think this plant could be susceptible to spider mites, could be susceptible to thrips, maybe could be susceptible to scale. But if you're doing some pest control treatments from time to time, I don't think you will ever have a problem with it. What I find annoying, however, I already talked about this, is the nectar actually, because the nectar in my case made some damage, so be aware about that. And that's about it for pests and problems. Another thing that you want to know maybe is the fact that this plant is not pet friendly. What else? Did I miss something? Hopefully not. When I get successful with this propagation, hopefully you will see updates on Instagram and TikTok. Don't forget to remove the excess water. And other than that, I'm really glad you watched this video and hopefully enjoyed some spontaneous gardening. If you want to support this channel, right now I'm searching for ideas for new videos. So if you have a burning question, if you have suggestions, please leave them in the comments. Super much appreciated. And until next time, you know my catchphrase, don't forget to take care of yourself and your plants.